Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Allison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Happy Monday, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Here we are, having lived through that 1 year anniversary and keeping along.
God.
It's time, I think, to really spend some time looking toward the future of education and early education and our lives. It's time to just start that march forward. And some of that has to do with how we're going to deal with what obviously have become some educational and socialization gaps for very young children and what we're going to do. And I'm going to tell you, Allison, what I really fear. I really fear that we're going to start to concentrate only on what the children struggle with versus teaching the whole child.
Yeah. Well, because everybody's so worried about, like, what did they lose? What did they lose? Oh my God, they're losing so much. And it's like, no, you just got to meet them where they are. And still they're a whole person. Like, nobody wants, even as adults, to stress about your issues. You want people to see you as a whole person. So,
right. We have to see them as whole people.
Yeah.
And here's one of the reasons why. I want to share with you some information that I have been kind of deeply diving into, the most current information. I'm taking a postgraduate course. And in that course, we've been learning about the science of learning and some brain science based on the most current information. And it's really interesting because what it teaches us is that all learning domains and content areas and subject areas depend on all the other ones, basically.
Right.
In this course I'm taking, they call it the unbounded nature of learning. And what they mean by that is that there are no boundaries around learning skills. In order for you to strengthen a certain domain or content area, we actually have to work on all of them. And it reaffirms why we have to have a whole child approach, because they don't exist in isolation. Topics and learning don't exist in isolation. It's not how the brain works. When the brain takes in information or tries to use information, many different parts of the brain connect and fire. And that the neurons are like firing back and forth, and it crosses over the content areas. It crosses over the different developmental areas. So if I'm working with a child who's struggling in one area, like, I don't know, social, emotional, or language, I actually have to work on everything with this child because all things support each other. It's also sort of like, when we say if you lose one ability or sense, your other abilities and senses take over and start to take their place as best as they can. It's sort of like that too, how the brain works. That parts of the brain that are stronger will help sort of to cover for other parts of the brain. And one of the things that they're talking about in this course is that we have never spent enough time helping children to develop executive function skills in the early childhood years. Part of the reason that we've never done that is because teachers aren't taught to do that and parents aren't taught to do that.
Right.
So Allison and I discussed it, and we thought it was an important topic to bring to the podcast because you can do your children such a favor by concentrating some of your efforts on these executive functioning, these overall cognitive and thinking skills that will help them with everything. Think about this. Think about it sort of like this. Something like learning the alphabet is impacted by your socialization and communication skills. So I can sit and drill A sounds like apple from now till doomsday. But if the child's socialization skills or language skills are not being developed at sort of the same pace, then that other area isn't going to move forward as quickly. There are some children who have developmental delays, and a lot of developmental delays fall in the area of executive functioning and socialization. And yes, we need to absolutely support those things, but sometimes I see teachers thinking, well, if I could just get the child to do this task, then all would be well, and we're going to just hammer away at this task. But it's not about the task. It's about developing the whole brain as best you can and the whole child as best you can. And I feel like I should, before you go on, Allison, I feel like I should define executive function.
Okay.
So I'm just going to define that and I'm going to hand it to you. When I'm talking about executive function, I'm basically talking about 3 areas of thinking. One is working memory. We have to help children develop their working memory, where they can remember and pull from it. Another thing we have to help children to develop is mental flexibility. They need that for things like problem solving, or if something doesn't go the way they thought, pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is self-control. And that's not something children are born with. They have to intentionally learn it. And we didn't always know how to teach them that. Okay, I passed the gauntlet to you. I know, I can see, those of you who are on YouTube, you can see Allison is just trying to say something. Go ahead.
I am. Okay. So how do we do what Cindy just talked about? How do we get the kids learning more about the working memory and their self-regulations? How do we do that? So we have to do that through making this fun for them, okay? Because we're not going to sit there and say, we're going to learn executive function right now, guys. No, we're going to do it by doing activities. So ways that you can do this with your children, especially really, really young ones, would be peekaboo, or hiding it, going like this. All of a sudden you're there again. And the surprise aspect kind of helps them out too, because then they're anticipating. So babies, even though you think this is a fun game, and it is, they're anticipating what's going to happen next. And that gets their brain moving. That gets their brain working.
Do you think, I think that's mental flexibility too. I can't see you, now I can see you.
Now I can see you. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it probably is a little bit of self-regulation of them waiting. They're waiting.
Yeah, they are waiting.
Of just making you come back on their own. They're waiting. So now you've covered all 3 in one game, and that's kind of what we're saying is like, not all of this is in isolation. It all kind of works together, right? Hiding objects under blankets and having them find it is another one, or having them also pretend to hide, which they're babies, they're not really hiding. You have them in one spot and then you're going around the room saying, where's Johnny? They think it's hilarious, but like they're anticipating you finding them.
Don't you feel like these are games that most families play and caregivers play with young children, but we didn't know that the purpose, they are developing executive function, but then it becomes more complicated as the children get older, how we have to purposefully and intentionally do activities with them that you may not have otherwise done. I don't know.
Well, one thing when I read was when I taught 3-year-olds, we would always sort objects, right? And it was like, put all the circles in the circle bin, put all the squares in the square bin or whatever. And it actually said like, switch it up so that they are flexible in their cognition. Be like, now we're going to put all the circles in the square bin and all the squares in the circle bin. And they're still sorting, but they have to think.
Squares in the circle bin? That would drive me crazy as a kid.
Right. And even adults have trouble with this.
Flexibility. I would have been like, Mom, I would have been the squares in the circle bin. It was terrible.
Yes. But it's so automatic, right? That you would just be like, it's a circle, it goes in the circle bin. And for you to have to sit there and think like, oh, wait, it doesn't go in here. I have to think, where did she tell me to put it? Wait, did she say square? Because this does not match. But that's, and it makes them. So you
want them to do these mismatched things? You want them to be, and you want to be a little unpredictable maybe in that. But I'm telling you, I would have gone home like, oh my gosh. They made me put the circular things in the other bin, and I know they go in that bin, and it would have been a thing. But maybe that speaks to my lack of flexibility.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable to be not flexible, right? Okay, so but also when we were kids, we didn't do that. Circles went with circles and squares went with squares because teachers weren't doing that. We were sorting, and that was the skill we were learning, but we weren't trying to be flexible in the sorting.
Don't you think that speaks to, it isn't the task that matters, it's the skills behind it. If you have kids picking up all the circles to put them in something, then folks, they know circle.
They know circles. Yeah.
You don't have to put it in the circle bin.
Yeah.
Okay. Drive me crazy.
Put it in the square bin. But also, like, you could do like big things into little, like try to fit the big ball into the little basket or something.
Not gonna work.
Yes, it's
Not
not
gonna
going to
work.
work. Right.
And mental flexibility. What else can we do?
What else can
Problem
we do?
solving, which is another
Because,
part of executive functioning.
right, because sometimes you have to make that happen. So, hey, we're going to put all the big balls in the little basket. Oh, wait, that doesn't work. So what are we going to do instead? And talk them through. What can we do instead? You know, because otherwise they're going to be like, doesn't work. Okay, I'm see ya. You know,
I'm picturing,
no.
Allison, I'm picturing our email and like Facebook messages saying, so today I made them put circles in a square.
I made them shove it in there.
And they really had trouble being that flexible. What about working
Yes.
memory? Did you read some stuff about working memory?
I did. So we all played the game memory before. I try now when I read all this stuff that Cindy sent me, which was like awesome stuff. I went to school the next day and was like, okay, how can I play the game of memory in these COVID times without actually having physical cards that they're not allowed to touch anymore because of COVID? So I found some YouTube videos that actually like will show like 6 pictures and it shows them in certain positions and it gives you 20 seconds to memorize where these things are and then they disappear. And then it'll ask you, where was the bird? And you'd be like, oh, I think it was in position 5. The kids thought it was the most fun thing they've done in forever. And
Did they really enjoy it?
They enjoyed it. They were laughing. If they got it right, they were excited. If they got it wrong, they were like, I'll try better next time. But they were having fun and it was using their working memory. And the video got harder and harder and harder where all of a sudden, like now there were 10 objects and it would wait longer. It would ask you not just for one, it would be like, where was the chick? Where was the puppy? Where was this? And you're like, even I had trouble remembering where the stuff was. And, so like those kind of things, I think it's fun for them.
Yeah.
And they were learning.
It should be fun for them. The activities they do in early childhood should be a lot of fun for them. Learning should be fun, folks. Learning can be fun.
Yeah.
When you think about things like working memory and mental flexibility and self-control, if you don't have those developed, how are you doing anything else? If my working memory doesn't work, you can tell me the alphabet and the numbers from now till doomsday, and I can't pull it out of my brain.
You're not.
If I don't have mental flexibility, I'm not able to solve the jigsaw puzzle or whatever it is you're giving me, or, if I can't kind of pivot. And self-control is required in order to participate in learning to some extent. Not every young child has a lot of self-control, but we have to help them to start to develop this.
You have to help them.
So these building blocks of working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control really need to be more intentionally worked on than we've done in the past. And, when I read that whole thing about how teachers aren't trained in this and parents aren't given information about this, it was like, I was sitting there like, oh, holy smokes, they're right. Like, oh my gosh.
They are right.
They're 100%
even
right.
I was like,
this is not what's emphasized. And this is not what we're trained in. And again, I mentioned this is sort of like a graduate, postgraduate class that I'm taking. This should be really this information I hope that they're also doing at the undergraduate level for teachers and in certificate programs maybe, and whatever it is, professional development. We all need to be talking about this. Don't you think that especially during this time when children have experienced things like lockdown, that these 3 areas could really be less developed than they were when children were having play dates and having to develop these skills, when children were not in the middle of a pandemic where we had to limit the materials with them, when children weren't with their families so often, and children have to exhibit a different level of self-control in a classroom than at home. And they develop that when they're able to be in school. And I think through none of our faults, this all was impacted during COVID-19. So if we're going to talk about the path forward, that path needs to include focusing on executive function skills instead of hammering away at some tasks that children can't do without these. Allison keeps referring to a resource, and I'm gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
shouldn't have done
link. No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if I can link it or upload it or whatever onto the podcast website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com. So if you're thinking,
because it's
what
so
activities
good, guys.
support this,
the resource is so good. It breaks it down by age group and gives you examples of what to do and what to play and how to do it. Like, because one of the things Cindy just said was in COVID times, it's really hard. Like a lot of that resource says imaginative play is pretty much in every single one of those age groups. But in my school, most of the stuff that you would do for imaginative play is gone. They're not allowed to have it
Yeah,
at
but
school.
children will pretend. You can make up stories. Children will pretend.
Right. So I make sure that my kids in my class have a lot of free time, a lot of recess, that they can go out and do that imagination stuff on their own. But then I also was like, let's write a story together, and you're going to write it, as a group. So like, that's how they got their creative juices going, and the whole story is theirs, and they're so proud of this thing. They want to have it published and put in the library at school. I was like, well, let's put more details in first, and we have to actually write the pages and stuff. But like, that's how I got them using their imagination, because we don't have a kitchen area in our room anymore, where they can just go in and plan this kitchen thing. So they had to do all of that during recess, but you had to give them the time to do it.
Allison, you can actually share their book virtually with parents who can't come in your setting now if you use storyjumper.com. Look, she those of you on YouTube are like, wait, she's getting a pencil. Everybody get a pencil. Storyjumper.com. You create digital virtual books.
They're going to be so excited.
You're welcome. Okay, use it with my college students. They create virtual books for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Storyjumper.com. And check our website, because we are going to be uploading the resource. Maybe I'll do it right after we record this, which is before we release it.
Yeah, then it's up there. Yeah.
I'll work on getting that uploaded to our site so that you can go on howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, look for the resources for listeners, and take a look at what activities you need to be doing with these children to really help lay the foundation for all their learning. It's all interrelated.
All of it, yeah.
When you think about it, even the content areas are so interrelated. Like math and literacy depend upon each other. Language and math and language depend on each other.
Science, math, science and language together.
History and language and memory. And listen, it's all, there is no, as they say in my class, it is unbounded. There are no boundaries between learning different things. Yeah. And way too often we've put these boundaries. You know why I think we put these boundaries? Because when you go to like middle school and high school, you have your 45 minutes of math, and your 45 minutes of language arts, and your 45 minutes of history. Yeah. So we've set up these we've set up these classes in a way that you would think that the impression is that they are completely and entirely separate entities. Yeah. But actually, if we would just treat them like they all go together.
Well, and they do. Like, even like this week in my math class, they were learning about circles, but they had a chart, and one side said circles and one side said not circles, and they had to sort. And I'm like, and I even stopped the lesson to be like, you need to know what this says in order to know what goes underneath it. And one of the kids is like, you mean we have to read?
Oh, no.
Yes. This is why we're learning how to read, because every single subject that we do requires reading. And his mind was like, what are you saying? His mind blown. Yeah. So, and
every subject we do has words.
I know. He was like, what are you talking about?
But also, every subject we do has math.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like you have to know how many letters make up the word. Yeah. I work with CDA credential students. They're allowed to write competency statements of up to 500 words. Like, the software counts the words for you now, but those are numbers. You have to know what they mean.
You have to know. Yeah.
It's all interconnected. And if you work with special education students, or you have a child who is in the special education world, please know that by strengthening and continuing to strengthen the areas in which your child doesn't struggle as much as others actually helps the ones that your child struggles in a little more. None of us are going to be perfect at everything. I will always be better at language arts than math. Math is not the biggest part of my brain.
Yeah, I am not good at math.
Not a bit.
Yeah.
But being able to do things like have working memory helps me with that math, and being able to even express with language helps me with that math, and understanding math helps me to communicate other things. And all interconnected. So we have to stop this notion that we grew up with that, language arts takes place in room 206 and only math takes place in room 209.
9. Yeah. Yeah.
And once you get into 209, you're going to have a stomach ache. But as soon as you get to leave there, you're good to go. Yeah,
you're good.
No, that's not how life works. It says the person
works.
who really should balance her checkbook today. So, it's not how life works. And we're not going to be good at everything. And you're going to have certain things that you're better at others. And so are the children. Every child has gifts. Every child has something that they're good at doing. I was speaking with a special ed teacher the other day, and she was talking about the struggles that one of her students has with communication as well as socialization. And we were talking about that. And it's sort of in the middle of the conversation. She said to me, but you should see this child pattern and sort and organize things. And I said, you know what? How can we promote that activity with the child? Because that can lead to a lot of interesting careers, actually.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if the child can pattern and sort really well, that can lead to a lot of things in the future. The child may never be great at socialization, may always struggle with communication, but may be able to do tasks that require the skills that the child is good at.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like if you build that up, then they get confidence and that bleeds into all the other areas. So he might be able to very much communicate about his patterns, right? And that'll open up his communication, but if you had to build up what's really strong in them. Yeah.
Communication is words, but that's an episode for another day.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
No, seriously though. Yeah. Not all communication is words. Children communicate a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've given you a lot to think about, and come to our website and check out those resources that I hope to be able to upload, but go check because I might have already. Feel free to contact us. Let us know how putting the round circle in the square thing went with your kids.
Yeah.
And
round hole. Yes.
and be sure to subscribe to us. If you haven't already, do us a favor. Go to YouTube. A lot of people did, by the way, but go to YouTube and subscribe to our podcast there, even though you may never watch it there. We really don't care how you listen to us or watch us. We're just glad you're here, Preschool Peeps. But by doing that, we get to get certain benefits. We're not there yet, but we hope to get there soon. The more people who go on and just hit subscribe on YouTube, the better off this podcast is.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to do that. Anything else, Allison? Did we forget anything? No, I think not. No, she's giving me the, I'm thinking no kind of look. Okay.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. So we're going to wish you hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As we together start to talk about the path forward and what we need to do with these children.
Yes.
Take care, folks.
Bye, peeps.
Bye, peeps.